Hello, Blue Jay fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'll be here today to talk to you about some Blue Jays baseball. And Sunny Side of the Dome is presented by Jays from the Couch, and we've got lots of good stuff for our viewers, our listeners. If you like what we've got here, there's lots of other options. Jays from the Couch has a regular podcast most Sundays with rare exceptions, most Sundays at 7 o'clock p.m. And as well, we've got another relatively new show by another couch mate, Steve Fichetti. That's on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. And his show is the On Fact Circle. And if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend it. Very worth watching. So let's lead off. So first off, the title. So some of you might be wondering, Sunny Side of the Dome, what's all that about? Well, it's kind of about me, your host, and my viewpoints, where I am in terms of my fandom. So I am a diehard fan of the Toronto Blue Jays, and in terms of my outlook, I try to balance optimism and realism. If I were to sit here today and tell you that I sincerely believe that Derek Fisher is going to win the AL MVP award in 2021, I would probably lose all credibility. So you're not likely to hear me say something like that. I want to be realistic. At the same time, there can be certain situations that are open to a little bit of interpretation one way or another. Sometimes the way I see it is some things you can look at in an optimistic way, a neutral / realistic way, or a pessimistic way. And in these situations, more often than not, I find myself on the optimistic side. So I hope that appeals to some of you and that you tune in and you like what you see and hear, because that's our point. We want to entertain and inform and have a good time chatting about Toronto Blue Jays baseball. So let's lead it off. First off, I'm very, very grateful that this is the premiere episode of Sunny Side of the Dome, and I am so happy to have the opportunity to do this show and to have a voice here on Jays from the Couch's YouTube channel, available as well through Facebook and Twitter live. Or if you missed the live, that you can always tune in. There's the archive recordings that are available, so that's great too. Sean Doyle, you're amazing. I can't express my gratitude enough for giving me the opportunity to be a part of Jays from the Couch. I write for you. I've participated in a number of podcasts with you and very often with other people too. And we always have a blast. And now I've got the opportunity to do this solo show and giving it my best shots, and hope if I don't hit it out of the park right away, hopefully I'll at least get a line drive or a single rather than a strikeout. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so these Blue Jays, interesting time to be a Blue Jays fan. The off season began, as we all know, and Ross Atkins went on record pretty early saying that he expected the team to be very active this off season, that there would be opportunities, whether it was by trade, free agency, but their goal was going to be to make the team better, as opposed to when Atkins and Shapiro took over the team a few years ago, when they made it very clear that their priority was to rebuild the farm system, and they did that, to their credit. So now they say that they're going for it. And I mean, there were all kinds of comments. Maybe it will come in the form of 2 elite players, or it could be 4 very good players. We're not really sure yet, but there's opportunity. And a lot of Blue Jays fans got excited. I did. And I think, judging by social media, that a lot of other people did as well. And, well, pretty early on, fairly early in November, they did re-sign free agent pitcher Robbie Ray. That's okay. I mean, he's got talent. if he can ever learn to cut down on those walks, enough to keep a lot of unnecessary base runners off the bases, he could actually be a good pitcher. So fingers crossed that that works out. So that was early November. Then we waited the rest of November, all of December, into the first part of January. And what happened? Not a whole heck of a lot, as we all know. And it was getting more and more frustrating. Meanwhile, we saw other teams making other moves. The Jays were linked to players such as Francisco Lindor, that pretty much everybody knew that Cleveland was going to be trading Lindor. And he ended up going to the New York Mets. Congratulations to the Mets. Apparently, the Jays were the runner-up. Okay, well, does that make anybody feel better? It's not going to win us any games to be the runner-up. Other players were coming off the board, and it just seemed like things were dragging on, and some people wondered, were there ever going to make any moves of significance? And then one day, in the middle of January, things all seemed to happen at once. There were, although nothing was official, there were free agent signings by the Blue Jays that were reported. Firstly, pitcher Tyler Chadwood. A little later on that day, pitcher Kirby Yates. And we thought, okay, well, they're starting to do something. Meanwhile, there were the big four, one of whom, DJ LeMahieu, had re-signed with the Mets already. Or, excuse me, the Mets. He had re-signed with the Yankees. Oh, okay, I was close. I got the city right. He had re-signed with the New York Yankees, which, to be honest, a lot of people probably expected. So there was DJ LeMahieu. He was off the board. And then there were the other big three. For one thing, the remaining free agents who had been offered qualifying offers and who had turned them down. So there was catcher JT Realmuto. There is still starting pitcher Trevor Bauer. And then there was outfielder George Springer. And later on that day, into the night, it was announced that the Blue Jays had reached an agreement with free agent outfielder George Springer. Well, I woke up and my Twitter feed pretty much for the whole day was all Springer, 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 and mostly good vibes, and rightfully so. I mean, this is a premier free agent, and he had other opportunities to go to other teams. He chose the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, as it turned out, as was revealed, the deal was 6 years, $150 million. That's a lot of change. That's a lot of money for one player. And it may very well be that the main reason or even the reason why Springer chose Toronto was that the Blue Jays just offered him the most money. And if that's the case, then so be it. That's part of the business of baseball. So it's official, and George Springer is now a Blue Jay. So what about that? Well, I'm going to talk the good, the bad, and the ugly. First off, the good. They have an elite player. They have an elite hitter. He's been phenomenal over his career. He has a career OPS of 852. He's one of the best hitters in the game. His OPS in 2020, for example, was 10th best in the entire American League among hitters with enough at-bats to qualify. So that's pretty incredible. His defense is good. He plays. He's actually. I was looking back over his last several years, and he's actually split time. At first, I thought he was just a center fielder, but he's not. He's actually split time between center field and right field. So that's something interesting to keep in mind. I'm assuming that at least initially they'll be using him, the Blue Jays will, as a center fielder. So, I mean, he brings his defense is good. I wouldn't say it's elite based on the stats that I've seen, but yeah, He brings some good defense to a very important position. I mean, he's done different things. He's been an all-star 3 times. He's been a silver slugger a couple of times. He's played in the postseason. He's won World Series MVP back in 2017. So the Jays have got themselves a really good player. And not only that, but I think the fact that they've added George Springer to a core that was already really good to begin with, it helps to legitimize the Blue Jays, if you will. Not that they were not legitimate before, but I mean, we've all heard the stories. You know, players who aren't Canadian, Americans, a lot of them don't want to sign with the Blue Jays. They don't want to play in what to them is a foreign country, and especially in 2021 with the pandemic, and they didn't get to play in Toronto last year, and who knows where they'll get to play this year, and we've all heard the stories. Well, a player as good as George Springer chose the Toronto Blue Jays, and you add him to a team that made the playoffs last year, a team that was third in the American League in runs scored, and with George Springer, they're only going to score that many more runs. So when free agents are making their decisions, or even if they try to trade for a player who might have a no trade clause and might try to veto Toronto in that way, it might give these guys something to think about. That, you know, hey, look at this team, and if part of what a guy wants is to win, that maybe Toronto is a destination, or the Blue Jays, whenever they end up back in Toronto, and they will. So it's just a matter of time. So that's George Springer, the good. The bad, possibly, at least down the road, hopefully not right away. I don't think it will right away, but again, we did spend a lot of money on this one player. It's a 6-year deal. Springer's already 31 years old. So by the end of this deal, he's going to be 37. I don't imagine that by that point in his contract that he'll be the everyday center fielder. I mean, let's face it, Father Time catches up with everybody, and people slow down, and at some point, it just won't be viable to have him patrol center field. So, yeah, what did they do with him then? Well, as I mentioned before, he has also played a good bit of right field. So at whatever point, it should be relatively easy to slide him over to right field, so to speak. And then it's just a question of who plays center field. So there's various different options. If Jonathan Davis is still around by then, he's an excellent defender. They also have a very highly thought of prospect, Austin Matthews, excuse me. Yes, I like the Maple Leafs too. No, Austin Martin, and they're not sure where Martin is going to play, so that might be center field. Here's a question. Does Springer's reputation for being strong in the community offset the extra dollars and years? That's a very good question. I think it certainly helps. I mean, I don't think I can give the definitive answer on that, but my opinion, I think it definitely helps. And I was fortunate enough to catch the introductory press conference yesterday when they officially introduced Springer as a Blue Jay. And it was interesting how much Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins emphasized Springer's character and the good things that he's done. That they don't just want a quality player, they want a quality person. So I imagine that was part of it on their end, that he's apparently done some really good things, and that's really wonderful. So all right, so that's the good. That's a little bit of possibly the bad. In the later years of the contract, you might not know what to do with him defensively. Might he even end up as a DH in the last year or two of the contract? we'll have to see. We'll have to see how he ages and various different things to look at. And now to the ugly. And this might be the only time that I get into this. It's not a secret. Everybody knows about it. Prior to coming to the Blue Jays, Springer spent his entire career playing for the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros, who won the World Series in 2017, only to later have it be revealed to everybody that as a team, they were cheating, that they were using electronics to steal signs and communicate signs with the use of trash can banging during at-bats. I know that there are a lot of people who are still upset about this, who haven't forgiven not just Springer, but anybody who was a part of that team. And I know there are even some people who have gone as far as to say that they don't want him on this team. Well, everybody has a right to their opinion. And I'm not going to sit here and try to change everybody's mind, because we all have the right to look at things differently and whatever way that we choose to do. All I can do is express my own way of looking at it. Am I okay with cheating? No, I'm not. I'm really not. Those things happened back in 2017, and unfortunately, and I don't know the extent to which Springer himself was involved. He was on the team when it was going on, and I'm sure he's not an idiot. I'm sure at the very least he was aware of it, and if he was a willing participant in it, then that's really, really unfortunate. The reality is that he is not the first person to ever play for this team who had a questionable past. And I hope he's the last, but I wouldn't bet on it. Unfortunately, people are human, and they do these things, if you want to call it an error in judgment or whatever you want to call it. So, for example, Melky Cabrera, he was a Toronto Blue Jay, and before he came to the Jays, he was suspended for PED use. And if memory serves me, I think Cabrera was pretty well liked during his 2 years as a Blue Jay, and there were a number of people who were sorry to see him leave as a free agent after the 2014 season. So really, what's the difference? Cheating is cheating. Now, some people might say, but Cabrera paid his dues. At least he was suspended. And to me, if that is the difference for anybody, then I believe blame is being placed in the wrong direction. I think blame for that belongs with Major League Baseball. They've got a policy in place for banned substances. They should do something with regard to the wrong use of electronics. I mean, it's not the first time we've heard about this. I mean, and there was something even before this with the Boston Red Sox and their use of Apple Watches or something during the game. Pardon me, my mind's a little bit fuzzy on the details, but anyway. So, in conclusion, this happened, and it's over and done, and I'm not telling anybody else how they should look at it. My choice is to move past it. George Springer is a Toronto Blue Jay. I welcome him. I really hope he keeps his nose clean, and I hope that he helps the Jays win a lot of ball games over the next 6 years. And that's my feeling about it. Hi, Matt. Question from Matt Sweeby. Are you happy with the Mets acquisition, and what role do I think that he plays in 2021? Good question, Matt, and thank you for the question. I'm probably, because we don't have all night with each other, my plan is actually to go into a little bit more detail about the pitching in next week's episode. But having said that, I'm a little lukewarm about it. I mean, he had a really awful season last year, and I heard about the trade, and I looked at his stats, and I thought, what the heck are you doing? Looking at it a little bit more in depth, Mats has some talent, and he could be kind of a reclamation project. So who knows? My fingers are crossed that that he'll rebound and be more like the pitcher he was a little earlier on in his career. But again, thank you for the question, and I'll get more into that next week. Bob Ritchie, with Springer on board, would you prefer Grichuk or Davis as the fourth outfielder, and why? Okay, very good question. Thank you for that. Um, for me, I think your fourth outfielder has got to be very strong defensively. So in that regard, I really like Jonathan Davis. I like defense, and I'd love to have him around. I mean, even if he fills in late in games, if he comes in as a defensive replacement to just to cut down a ball in the gap, that sort of thing, Randall Grichuk, I mean, he's under contract and a fair sized contract for the next 3 years. And I don't quite know what they're going to do. I believe, as things stand now, if nothing changes, I believe Jonathan Davis still has one more minor league option. So it would be fairly easy from an organizational standpoint to option Davis and keep Grichuk around, and maybe he could be your fourth outfielder. I mean, he can play all three positions. His defense is okay. It's nothing spectacular. Offensively, like looking at the last year or two, compared to obviously George Springer, but even the other in-house options, Teoscar Fernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Grichuk has had the lowest numbers of the four of them. So, yeah, it's a little hard to say what'll happen there if he stays with the team as a fourth outfielder, or even if they find a trade partner, if they have to include some cash. I don't know. I don't know what the front office is going to do. I can only I can only pay attention and have my own thoughts and hope, like all of us fans. So so that's the big acquisition. And the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today is that just within the last couple of days, there's, although it's not yet official, but rumored to be another free agent signing, and that is free agent infielder Marcus Semien. Semien, he's 30 years old. He's spent his career up until now with the Oakland Athletics, and he's had kind of an interesting career up until now. He's had a career OPS of 747. Not terrible for a middle infielder, and he's pretty much played shortstop his career. Early in his career, his defense wasn't all that great, but to his credit, he worked on it, and he became very good to the point where in both 2018 and 2019, he finished in the top three of Gold Glove voting for American League shortstops. So that's really good, obviously. Something that the Jays really badly need if they want to move forward is improvement in their defense. Now, they're not going to use Marcus Semien at shortstop, not as long as they have Bo Bichette, knock on wood. But God forbid if Bichette maybe needs a day off, or if he ends up on the IL, please God no, but it could happen, it happens. So if that's the case, we've got an in-house option who has played shortstop and could slide over. The interesting thing, to me anyway, from what I hear, is the Jays have talked to Semien, and their intention is to have him play second base, and possibly Kevin Biggio slide over to third. To me, I find that a little bit curious. If anything, I kind of wonder why they don't do that the other way around. Why don't they leave Biggio at second base? That's the position where he has played the most games, and let him be there and be comfortable at it and improve, and move Semien to third. Steve, what did Blue Jays do with Marcus Semien proved to be a defensive liability at second base? Well, I sure as heck hope that's not the case. But what do they do if he does? I mean, as it stands right now, I mean, you could put Biggio back at second base, but then what do you do about third base? There is Santiago Espinal. He's, I believe he's a natural shortstop, and they kind of used him at different positions in the infield last year. So, I mean, you could at least have him move around, and I don't think you'd lose much defensively. So that's another option if they don't end up acquiring an actual third baseman by trade, which really, that's kind of what I thought they'd do and what I hope they do, but it didn't work out that way, at least for now. Jim Scott, do you think that the Simeon signing means that Biggio is available in trade? Kind of a vote of no confidence in Kevin. I don't know any more than you do what the front office is thinking. All I can say is I hope to heck that that's not the case. I mean, Biggio, he's one of those players that, well, he might not jump out at you as having, blazing speed or someone who's going to hit 50 home runs or a gold glove player at a premier position. Biggio just does so much right that I want him on my team as long as he can reasonably play. And I might go more into depth in that in another episode because we're kind of running a little bit long here, but that's okay. So yeah, Simeon, Alex Chow, do you see the Jays trading for quality starters? Also, what players do you feel are untouchable as trading assets for these pitchers? Excuse me. Very good question. Thank you. Definitely an area of need that remains the biggest area of need, in my opinion, is starting pitching. So I think even though they went out and got Steven Matz, I don't think he's the answer. I don't think anyone is looking at him in that way or should be looking at him in that way. So whether they fill that need through free agency or trade or maybe one of each, I could certainly see them. There's a few different trades that they might consider making. What players do I feel are untouchable? my feelings might be a little bit different than theirs and then a lot of people's. If you happen to, and for anybody who's on Twitter, if you caught a few days ago Major League Baseball giving the Blue Jays a really nice shout out and saying that the Blue Jays core is looking really nice. And the picture included Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and of course, front and center, George Springer. If it was up to me, if I'm the Blue Jays GM, I'm not trading any one of those guys because I really believe that they are the center of a future Blue Jays championship team. Not everybody feels the same way that I do. I realize that, and that's fine. As I said before, we're all entitled to our different opinions. So yeah, some great questions today. Thank you very much. And yeah, Marcus Simeon could be an interesting signing. It's a 1-year deal, and he had a really good season with the bat in 2019. Kind of regressed last year, but I understand he got off to a bit of a slow start, and in a 60-game season, a slow start can really get magnified. So there's some potential there. So we've had some chats about some Blue Jays position players, some new acquisitions, had some really good questions. And I wanted to introduce what I think will be a regular feature of this show. So a little bit of history. I talk to my husband all the time about different things, obviously. A lot of it is baseball. And for years, he's been telling me that I look at the world through Blue Jay colored glasses. Well, as of a few years ago, I actually own Blue Jay colored sunglasses. I love to wear them. It's a lot of fun. So I figured I would end every episode by putting on the glasses and giving one take that hopefully will be a lot of fun. It may or may not be realistic. It may be pushing the boundaries of realism into optimism, but that's fine too. So here we go. Through Blue Jay colored glasses, take number 1. In 2021, my prediction is that there will be more than one Toronto Blue Jays position player who receives votes for American League MVP. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Springer has had votes on 3 different occasions. Simeon finished, I believe, third in MVP voting in 2019 with a great year that he had. Teoscar Hernandez with a great breakthrough season that he had in 2020. He received some votes. And we haven't even talked about Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think those two have big MVP potential. Bichette, he needs to stay healthy for a full season. Hopefully he'll do so in 2021 and beyond, for his sake, for the team, for everybody. Guerrero Jr., some people have given up on him. I think that's silly. He's still young. He's got a ton of potential with the bats. And we're going to see that great hitter that everybody predicted. It wasn't a mirage. It's in there. He just has to find his stroke and the consistency, and it's coming, hopefully in 2021. So that's my prediction for what it's worth. And on that note, I think that's as good a place as any to say so long, and thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode of Sunny Side of the Dome. See you again next week.